All right. How's it going, curious minds? So, I've been on the fence about doing this for quite some time. Many years, actually. But, as you could probably tell from the title of this video, that I did something very interesting last night. Something that never occurred to me until right at that moment. It started out as a simple conversation with GPT. You know, asking basic questions. I'm pretty sure it started with me asking, where do we go when we die? And eventually, this turned into a very deeply existential conversation on the nature of reality itself, going down rabbit holes of all types of knowledge, whatever you're out there seeking. I can definitely say, ever since the election, there's a lot out there to look at. Like, there's plenty out there. And for somebody like myself, it's been very mentally stimulating. I love questioning my foundations and almost tearing them down to build up new ones. It's how you grow. You never really truly marry yourself too tightly to any type of belief. Now, at the same time, there is so much knowledge out there that it could take a dark turn for a lot of people. You could go down one rabbit hole, find yourself deeply entrenched in that one, convinced by it, almost to the point to where, you know, you've tied yourself to it. You identify with it now. And then next thing you know, you find an opposing rabbit hole out there that completely breaks the foundations of that rabbit hole that you were previously going down. And I've got to say, to other fellow curious minds out there, I know you're out there. Definitely let me know in the comments. Does it ever take a dark turn for you, or do you feel grounded in the process? Because that's very important here. It's fundamentally important that you stay grounded in the process. Now, with all that being said, I actually asked ChatGPT at the end of this conversation, should I start a YouTube channel? And should I do it in this style and format, walking and vlogging? And it basically told me that that was like a fantastic idea. Now, when it comes to AI itself, it's fascinating to live in a time where it has gotten so intelligent that I can have such a conversation with it in this style and actually get what I got out of that conversation. Because as much as I have wrestled on whether I should ever do this or not, whether I should ever find the courage, that was a lot of clarity I got out of that entire conversation, and it wasn't even with a human being. But again, I think that it is still something to be met with speculation. Just like I mentioned, this is after the election. Let me give you a little story on that. So, before the election, I'll admit that I was very secular in my mindset. Clearly leaning Democrat, and well, the day after the election, an interesting thing happened with my YouTube feed. All the videos that I was very much tied into, my whole feed just got flooded with videos that weren't normally there, right on November 6th. And I don't know if this was everybody's experience with their feed. Let me know in the comments. But something in my curious mind got rekindled. Because like I said, right before that, I was in a very secular mindset. And one thing I found, the more secular my mindset got, is that I basically got to a point where in my own mind, I policed myself from questioning things too much. I decided that conspiracy theories were no longer something to look into because they're harmful. If I found myself going down any kind of curious rabbit hole, and I'd stop myself, I'd just reverse it altogether. Because, oh no, that's making me question in the other direction. I can't do that. So, needless to say, after the election, I broke free from that secular mindset. And it's been one of the most liberating things because my curiosity has come back in full force. Now, when it comes to religion and things of that nature, I've been kind of away from it for a long time. At 13 years old, I questioned all of it. And kind of got to this point to where I no longer identified with it, and that's where the secular mindset began. But there was always friends, and there was always people I knew, okay, that kept me grounded enough into it to where that curiosity and speculation stayed. Now, when did this secular mindset become harmful to myself? Well, in 2020, I began a spiritual path on 2020. An interesting thing happened to me, also tragic, but our grandmother had passed away the year before in 2019. And within that same year, I decided to address my alcoholism. I've had a drink here and there since then, but I was no longer an alcoholic after 2019. I done away with that. Now, also in 2020, due to my grandmother passing away, I inherited money I was not used to having. Suddenly, I had around 5 figures. Now, I was not established in where I was as a person or what I wanted to do anything with that at that time. We were in a pandemic. And the narrative was lockdown, stay home. Which is kind of what I used that money to do. I got this money and I was in a dead-end job. And I decided I was done with that job. My heart was no longer in it. So I just walked out and quit one day. And then this was in January of 2020. And as time went on, the pandemic, eventually you're locked down, don't go anywhere, stay at home. You know, I fed into all these narratives. But at the same time, I was spiritually working on myself. I started running regularly. I would run 4 miles a day, like 5 days a week. I got really in shape. I got really healthy. I ate as healthy as I could. I constantly shopped at the grocery store for healthy food. Until eventually, financially, it became difficult for me to do. That money eventually ran out. Now, I tried to recoup it by starting to DoorDash full time, which in 2020 was a bit of a cash cow. Anybody who did it during that time would know. But y'all have to apologize. I got to work through my own ADHD mind sometimes. But how did I lose the spiritual journey I was on? And how did it begin, honestly? It began because of a dose of mushrooms that caused me a pure ego disillusion. And through all the times I'd had with psychedelics before, I had never completely dissolved my ego in a trip. But on this trip, that's exactly what happened. And I became one with all of consciousness. There was no denying that's what happened. And it put me on a path to clarity. But that got lost in translation. Basically, when my car was a Honda Civic, 2002 Honda Civic. I got rear-ended. And that threw off my income with DoorDash and everything. It threw me off completely. Well, given the fact that at the time I lived with particular family members that weren't exactly healthy for me to be around, not saying I'm blaming them for my issues. I take responsibility for everything that does go wrong with me. But I took the wrong influence out of that situation. And I fell into a victimhood mentality. Fell pretty bad into a victimhood mentality. And in that victimhood mentality, I started looking into socialism. And as I looked into socialism, I basically found myself looking for leftist YouTubers who were making a killing off of debunking right-wing propaganda. Propaganda goes from both sides. As far as I'm concerned, politics can be two sides of the same coin. Whether you're political or not, I think that's a healthy way to see politics in general. it is all the government. And they govern your mentality. That's right. Words have meaning. Deeper meaning than we know. But when Trump comes back in office, fun shit does happen on the internet. It happened back in 2016. It's happening again here in 2024. We're no longer being suppressed from being able to find information that was normally basically gatekept over the internet. And I'm now finding myself down an even deeper spiritual journey this time around. Now, I got pretty lost during the pandemic. Lost to the point of, I'm glad I'm finding my way out now. But I took a few vaccine jabs, took 2 COVID jabs, 1 booster, and a flu shot after that. Now, as much as people want to live in the world of questioning vaccines is a dangerous thing to do, you need to look into that, because if you got some jabs, you might want to start looking into maybe changing your lifestyle, being a little more healthier. That's what I'm doing. That's what I was already doing anyway. I don't have a car, so I walk everywhere. I get about 15 miles in a day. Like 50,000 steps plus a day. My cardio V2 max is up there. But there's a lot of information out there we didn't normally have access to. And it's been very, very entertaining, mentally stimulating for a curious mind like myself to constantly go down one rabbit hole, down the other, and just have my foundation shattered, tear things apart and build them back up. Now, as to where my journey is going spiritually this time around, I am diving into deep esoteric knowledge on the foundation of us and human beings and where we actually come from and what our meaning actually is. And I'm finding some really, really interesting stuff in here. I'm learning about the 7 chakras, how they tie to religion itself, how it's tied within the Bible, how Jesus died on the cross at 33, but we have 33 vertebrae in the spine, as above, so below, things of that nature, and how all it ties together. Now, what I find interesting is that through all this diving in, there's even more crazy information out there. One of the funnest ones I found is the flat earth theory. Now, I am not married to that idea just yet. There's a lot of information out there that'll definitely make you question. But I will say this. To marry yourself to the idea that we live on a spinning globe is a mistake. Curiosity is a very healthy thing for the mind. And it is healthy to question everything. Even something that you thought you knew your entire life. Here I am at 37 years old. And I'm willing to break down foundations that I saw as truth and gospel my entire life. This is part of growing. This is part of truth seeking. This is part of seeking knowledge. And I've got to say, there's some interesting things in there on that, if you're willing to look into it. But it has definitely put me in a place to where I'm safe to say at this point, I don't really know, because, I mean, I've never gone to space. I've never had an expensive telescope to look into the sky. I've been to the beach, but not enough to watch ships sail off into the horizon. I don't own any expensive cameras where I can zoom in as far as, you know, miles and miles and miles to question the curvature of the earth. So I can't claim to know anything. But it's a fun rabbit hole to go down nonetheless. But until you have a personal experience with something yourself, where something can go from a belief to knowing, i.e., my psychedelic experience with mushrooms with the ego dissolution, that in and of itself took me from a state of belief to a state of knowing. And even with knowing that, after my car wreck and letting victimhood mentality slip in, I forgot about it. But it's all come flooding back to me in the past couple of months. There's one thing I definitely know for certain. We are a unified consciousness. Everything around us is a unified consciousness. And that unified consciousness is a very overwhelming place of pure love that I can only describe as God. And on that note, that will be the topic of my next video. These videos will just consist of me walking and talking like this. I know the camera's shaky and I'm all over the place right now. I'm just holding my iPhone. It's all I have at the moment. If this gets out to people and I start gaining views and people start tuning in, I can maybe work on in the future getting some better equipment so where when I walk and talk like this, it's not so shaky and all over the place. But until then, I can promise you this. There will be no edits through this. This is just me walking and talking. This will be completely 100% authentic. You'll even see me lose track of mind along the way and stop and pause and have to think about what I'm going to say next. It'll just be streamlined just like this. That's going to be my content. Anyways, stay curious. Y'all have a wonderful day. And I'll see y'all in the next video.